You are now listening to Effin Radio.
Welcome to F&B Radio.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you. April Dove is here, the founder of the CommUNITY Brew.
Yes.
It's been a long time coming. We've been trying to get...
Yeah.
You're very busy.
Yes. And too busy.
Too busy. But it's good because you got so many things going, and I've been so excited to talk to you just about what you're doing in the beer community, and hear more about the community in general. But you wear so many hats.
Yeah.
The brewing aspect of it and founding the brew community, when did that start, and what was your life like at that point?
Yeah, so it all kind of started, so I've always loved beer. That's how the story starts. I've always loved beer.
Really?
I used to drink beer in college, the cheap beer or whatever. And then my best friend moved to Germany after college, and I went to go visit her in 2012 at Stuttgart, and got to try all the craft beers in Germany.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, this is where it's at. This is what I need to be doing. In hindsight, I wish I would have paid more attention to what I was drinking, so I could be like, oh yeah, I tried this, and I went to this brewery, and I went to that brewery. But it was great. And then I came back home from the States after 2 weeks, definitely 10 pounds heavier from all the beer and the sausage and all the food.
Food's so good though.
So good.
And it's so perfect for beer.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Oh my god.
And you can walk around the streets with beer. You can get on the train with beer. It's so amazing. And then basically came home, started travel nursing, so I'm an ER nurse, and then started travel nursing and just started going to breweries all the time. Every place I went, every new location I went to a brewery or whatever. So I got into the craft beer scene that way. And then it kind of just developed over time. And then I met my really good friend, Carlene, in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. And she took me on a 13 brewery 3-day tour in Portland, Maine.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we hit up a lot of breweries.
Yeah.
And it was great. And Allagash is where I was like, this is it. I'm always going to be here. This is what I want to do. And I was like, I don't want to be a nurse anymore. I want to be a brewer. And it was great,
I feel like if you have been a person that's gotten into craft beer in America anyway, I remember early 2000s when Allagash came on my radar, and I was just like, this barely even tastes like what I know to be beer, but I love it. And it was such a more finesseful, kind of nuanced, totally different flavor profile. So I was almost like, this isn't even I get that it's technically beer, but that one is, they just got that brewery does some beautiful work.
They do. They really, really do. Their ingredients are all local from Maine. They use organic materials. They use all of their ingredients are local besides the hops, which are from Yakima Valley in Washington State. But they just do a really good job, and they have a lot of love in their beer, and you can taste it. And you can taste when a beer is rushed. You can taste when a beer takes its time. You could taste all of that, and they have such great beer. And every time I go to Maine, that's the one place I stop at. I go there. I sit there for hours and just drink their beer.
Oh my god, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were like, I want to quit being a nurse. I want to get into beer. I want to do this full time. And then what happened?
So the way the story happened was in July of 2020, I ended up having to have surgery and coming home from travel nursing.
Oh my god.
And after the surgery, I thought I'd be up in 2 to 4 weeks, but I was down for 4 months.
Oh my god.
And I was like, what am I going to do or whatever? And I started really looking into the beer industry, getting on Instagram, looking at beer people, all that kind of stuff. And I found the black beer chick, Eugenia Brown, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And she had a Road to 100 program, which is basically Cicerone Certified Beer Server course. It was a 12-week program and had multiple mentors. They basically taught you each week a new subject, and basically at the end of the 12 weeks, you could go take your Certified Beer Server exam for free.
Wow.
And become certified in beer. So I went ahead and did that program while I was out for the 4 months. Really enjoyed it, learned a lot, and was like, I want to know more. How can I learn more? And they're like, well, you just need to know this for this exam. And I'm like, but I kind of want to know more.
Yeah.
And, so then I was like, well, there has to be some other way. And they're like, well, you could go to beer school. And I was like,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
I'm like, of course it is. But
yeah, and I remember being at Sierra Nevada with a couple of friends a couple years back and meeting these guys that were in fermentation science at Appalachian State. And I was like, oh, let me see if that program is still existing. Well, it was. but it was you had to be on campus for it. And I was like, I already have bills. I already have a life. Like, there's no way I can do that. So I looked up other programs. Cyber Technology School in Chicago is a big one. They have some online courses. They even have a 2-year program where you like go in-house and study, and then you go to Germany and Belgium and Netherlands for a year.
Oh my God, cool.
So that was really dope, but I wasn't able to do that one. But I did find the American Brewers Guild in Middlebury, Vermont, and went to their online program. And believe it or not, a lot of the brewers here in Charleston went to that same program.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
That's
I
so
knew
cool.
like if I wanted to get in the beer industry as a woman and as a woman of color, I had to get my accreditation somehow. You know, they weren't going to take me seriously if I didn't have the accreditation and show that I had the drive to do something.
Yeah.
So that's why I went to beer school, and I did that in January of 2021, and did that for 6 months, and then went to Middlebury, Vermont for 2 weeks and did a on-campus clinical or whatever you guess you would call it, and we did all hands-on stuff, and it was so much fun. And then came home, and while I was in school, I was also going to Holy City because my boyfriend at the time worked there, and was
Which is right down the road from here. At that point, right?
Yeah,
It was, okay.
So it was doing really well, and I was like going to school, and I was going to the brewery just to kind of learn things, the things that I was reading in the books I was trying to put to like actual hands-on.
Yeah.
And during that time, Chris Brown from Holy City asked me how he could get more Black people into the brewery. At first, I was like, I have no idea. Don't ask me those questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it. So I thought about it for a while, and it kind of came to me, and I was like, we need to brew to their palates. You have 36 beers on your tap and on your menu, but none of those beers resonate with anybody. Like, a lot of people think all these beers are bitter beers. Most people think craft beer is just bitter. And it's not. There's over 100 different styles. And I was like, we need to brew to something that will resonate with our community, with the Black community. And I was like, I know a lot of Black people drink Heineken, so let's try to make a beer that's similar to that in style that will help them like drink it and be like, oh yeah, I remember that time I was out with friends or at a cookout or whatever. So he was like, all right, well, come up with a recipe and brew it on your homebrew system, and then we go from there.
Wow.
So I met with my friend Paul, who helps me with my brewing or whatever.
Is this Pavlich?
No.
He worked at Holy City too. Paul Pavlich, curly headed Paul. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is Paul Hull. He works, he's in the military, but he has been a homebrewer for 14 years.
Whoa.
And he helped me with the recipe and stuff. And we drank Heineken one night, just all night, and try to get the recipe or whatever down or whatever. And brewed the beer on our systems. And then we took it to Holy City, and they loved it. And they were like, yeah, let's brew this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So when you said he was trying to get more Black people into the brewery, I have to tell like a little story about when I got into craft beer, because I was like I've always worked in food and beverage, and like I was a waitress at the time. I was like kind of just dropped out of school, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And this was like early 2000s, like kind of when I was barely of drinking age, but I just remember it sort of exploding onto the scene. But beer, especially craft beer, was being marketed to white males essentially. And I worked at a restaurant that was called Flying Saucer. And now when I look back, it's so cringy. I'm like, oh my God, but like we wore like German lederhosen. Like it was very like borderline of Hooters, but it was expensive beer, craft beer, over 100 taps.
Wow.
And they were bringing on all this beer, but I remember being like, why is the clientele ill? Like, it was fully being marketed to them. And at like a really, like those beers are expensive, right?
Yeah.
Like this is not just like you come in and grab a pint. Like this is like, oh, this is my hobby. It's like, and so I learned so much about craft beer and like totally opened my mind to what beer could even taste like and how different it is. And it was amazing. But I do remember thinking like, this is really, it felt like it wasn't even for white women. It was like for white men in a weird way. And like, we were the ones, it was all girls that worked there. And it was like, we were the ones serving these really fancy beers, but we had to know all about them. But they were the consumer. And I'm like, this has kind of been a thing that I think is definitely needs to change in how beer is marketed, because it's sort of just been like, that's kind of why people of color, I would imagine, or even women were like, that's not my thing.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know?
Yeah.
And it's really only in retrospect when I look back on it, I'm like, Because like I think it's kind of a running joke in craft beer, but it's like for hipster dudes, like the white dude with the like nerdy mustache that like loves a really hoppy IPA.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's so much more to craft beer than that.
There is.
That's like what initially when you came onto my radar, I was like, I love this. Like, it doesn't have to be a like split your head open. Even how the labels are created, it's like Skull Crusher. Like, it's very like machismo. White dude stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So changing, I think what you said is so brilliant. Like, let's think about the flavor profile like, and think about the palate of the people that are going to be consuming it, and not just trying to hit one demographic, because
exactly.
that's kind of what it has been for years.
Right.
And it's kept a lot of people out for various reasons. I mean, price point is definitely one of them. If you're a college kid or if you're a person that's lower income, like, you don't have that kind of money to you're like, I remember my dad being like, hey, you want to try this? And he was like, no, I'm doing just fine with this natural light. Like, I don't need that.
Right.
But then when he tasted it, it was like game changer. So like trying to make that more accessible to everyone, it seems like a tricky puzzle, but I think your answer is so brilliant. Like, let's start with the flavor profile. Let's start with what people are already drinking and make something that's like leveled up version of that and local. Yeah,
definitely.
Because the home brewer, like, how many beers had you home brewed at that point? Like, you were taking these courses.
So I had only home brewed for a year. So this is only my second year. So I'm still pretty green to home brewing. I'm doing a pretty good job now. Like, I'm kind of getting in my groove, and I'm brewing at least once or twice a week or once or twice a month, and just brewing. But, it takes a lot of practice and a lot of like keep going over and over and over again. And it's also really cool because I get to brew at the breweries too on the professional level. So whatever I get to learn at the professional level, I get to take that home and kind of water that down to the homebrew level, and do those different things. And I think it's right, like you said, it's really about changing the way people think about craft beer, that it's not all hoppy, that we're just trying to get to the base flavors that people would recognize and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember that flavor. It takes me back to this time. It takes me back to these good vibes, whatever it may be. So like with our community lager, it took them back to Heineken and probably like cookouts and stuff like that. But then, the Tahitian Treat Sour probably took them back to like their childhood, or whatever, that sweet soda that they used to drink all the time. Then Watermelon Wheat, takes you back to, slavery and stuff like that. And after Juneteenth, the emancipation of slaves, that it was a freedom fruit or whatever. And it was, giving people life and giving people growth and giving people monetary value or whatever. So it's like, I want to make sure there's stories behind the beers.
Absolutely. And so when you decided to start the community brew, what did that look like, and who's a part of it, and kind of give us a little picture of what that looks like to get it off the ground?
Yeah. So, in the beginning, it was really just kind of like, I thought it was just going to be one beer. Like, I didn't think it was going to be this big. I was just like, I just want to do one beer.
Wow.
And I had partnered at the time with David White, the Dropping Pen, to help me out because I knew that I could do the beer, but I knew I didn't have the reach of the Black people in the Black community in Charleston. So I had just come back home from travel nursing. So I hadn't been in South Carolina in over 9 years. So I was like, I need to get with somebody who can get those people in. Yep. And I knew he was the perfect person. I had met him at Munkle one night. He was the only other Black guy in the brewery. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. There's another Black guy in a Belgian brewery. I'm like, wow. And met him, and we worked together on the first beer. And it was really successful, and we did really, really well on it, And then we got our PR person, Tawana Tolbert, who was great with writing the press releases, coming up with flyers, coming up with graphics, stuff like that. And then after the first beer, me and David kind of split ways or whatever. He wants to do his own thing. I want to do mine. So now it's just me only on the beer side, along with my secretary, Yasmin Brown, who's like our virtual assistant, who kind of is a maverick of everything. She does all kinds of things, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. So right now it's just really a 3-woman team right now, just kind of rocking it out and doing the best we can. And we're just really just trying to get the message out there that, Black people can be in these spaces.
Yes.
It's not a white-dominated thing. You only make it white-dominated when you don't show up.
Right. I mean, and I think that is a fair point. But also I'm like, how do we make it like to where they want to show up. And it's like you're saying, making the beers that I think having a story, because a lot of times, like if you look at champagne, people will shell out a mint for champagne because you have these fabled houses and like all of this stories and history. And it's kind of like, if you strip it all away, you're like, yes, these wines are beautiful, but it's a lot of marketing, right? Like it's a lot of making that the story and people being like, oh, that I want to identify with that sort of beverage. Because people, whether it's food, drink, whatever, you want to feel connected to what you're eating. People tend to want to eat the things like, yes, we love to explore and try new things, but it's also like the things that make you feel comfortable, especially when you're talking about an alcoholic beverage. It's like, that's pure personal taste.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you can say whatever, like someone might say that's good, but it's like you got to get in there and like try them and see that there are options for you. And when it's been a white male dominated space, like the place that I worked at, like I just remember being like, I get why people of color wouldn't want to come in here, but also I like what you're saying, which is show up anyway.
Yeah.
Show up and like try it.
Yeah.
And make your and like be in the space and like you just kind of having to find all of these different ways to even get the education that you needed.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not really easily accessible. Like you had to search 3 different programs and none of them were even able to be taken online. And then at the end, you still have to like practice and brew and see what you like and play around with it. So there is an element of like, I don't know. I get why some people of color would be hesitant to come into a space, but I love what you're doing because once you get in there, it's like, no, this is really like, I mean, if you look at the history of beer and you'll know better than me, but I'm like, beer is for everyone and always has been for everyone. Like whether or not it's a traditional beer, like people have been brewing some sort of alcoholic beverage since what? I mean, like the beginning of time, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
And it was mostly, I was reading some of the things on your Instagram is so cool because there's so much education involved and like just facts that you're like, wow, I didn't even think about that. But even like the term ale wife, like women specifically were the ones that kind of started the brewing process.
Yeah, started the brewing process for sure.
And I did not realize that.
Yeah, they were the ones that brewed the beer and had their houses and they sold the beer. It wasn't until men realized that they were making so much profit off of it, then started saying that they were witches and all this kind of stuff. And then that's how the witch term came back. So the cauldron and all that, that's alewives brewing beer in big old kettles. Just kind of how we do now. We just do it in a tank and a cylinder. But yeah, so alewives started first. Beer dates back to Mesopotamia and the African and Egyptians and all that. There's a talk that in an article that says that beer was founded back in Egypt, you know, with the pharaohs and all of them. So they could have been the first people that started making beer. Wow. You know?
It's unbelievable. Like the history just goes back so far, but I think along the way, like you're saying, once you saw it was profitable and then they market it to people with an expendable budget, it gets kind of taken away from the people that created it essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is so fucked up. And it's like, I love what you're doing because I'm like, the community, if I'm not mistaken, like you kind of work with all different breweries to sort of make your presence known in a lot of different spaces rather than just starting a brewery. But is that the goal one day? Would you like to have your own brewery or do you think it's easier to kind of infiltrate these communities and be like, no, we're welcome in these spaces too and kind of divide and conquer?
So it's been funny. So I've had people come to me and ask me would I like to start a brewery or, you know, would I like to open up something? And, you know, at this point in my life, I'm kind of like, I would like to push the brakes a little bit. I like what I'm doing right now where I'm infiltrating breweries, telling them that they don't have enough people of color into their tap room. Yes. Let's brew a beer. Let's see if we can get this population, this community inside your brewery first. But eventually, I definitely want to open up something and have a community where people can come and feel safe and drink a beer. Going to Atlanta was like amazing because there's so many Black breweries in Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah. And it's great. You walk in and there's just people that look like you all over drinking beer and having a good time. And I'm like, oh, I would love to have something like this in Charleston. This would be so great. Yeah. It was so refreshing and it just made me feel so great. And when I was there for Memorial Day weekend, we went to a lot of breweries with a whole bunch of girlfriends and we had a good time. And then I come back here and it was like going 2 steps backwards. Yeah. Because you like sit in a brewery and you're like, oh, I'm the only one again. You know? And it's like, that's why I'm so big on just try it. I know you say you don't like it, but just try it.
Yeah.
There may be something that you like. And, you may not like my beer at the brewery, but you might find another beer at the brewery that you may like.
100%.
And that's why when I pick breweries, I try to pick breweries that have a wide range of different beers, because I'm like, maybe you don't like the beer that I made, but there are other beers here that you might like. So why don't you try just different ones or whatever? And I'm always up to suggesting people like, oh, try this, try this, try that, try this, So.
It's, and going back to that, like, it's such a personal thing. Like, your taste is your taste. So I think if the brewery's doing a good job, they're putting a bunch of different styles and flavors, so that there's something for everyone there, which hasn't always been the case, because as we know in the business, when it's like you need something that sells, people tend to start putting on what is selling more. But I'm like, offering a variety, I feel like a similar correlation is in the wine space. When you talk about natural wine, there was a big pushback. People were like, oh, I don't recognize that label, or that's not my style. This is weird for this style of beer. This is uncharacteristic of this style of wine. But like you're saying, just try it. Like, put it in the glass. Even, taste it. Any good brewery will give you a taste. You don't have to commit to the pint. You can go in and try it and kind of find your space, because it is so personal. And there's no one way to be like, oh, this is a beer that one group of people is going to like.
Right.
But getting them in there to try it, I think, is just the key to kind of creating more diversity, not just in the people who are making the beer, but the people who are patronizing the breweries.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
I think your approach is so cool, because going in and kind of disrupting the space in general, and then also individual breweries, is more effective, than just having one place where it's like, oh, this is a black run brewery, and that's where you can go. It's like, no, you can go to all of these
places,
and you should be going to all of these places if you want, if there's something that tastes good to you there.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you think beer is changing in these times? Because like we were kind of saying, when it came on the scene in the early 2000s, and that's just when it came on my radar, I'm sure it was around, like, I remember just craft beer becoming like a buzzword in the early 2000s. So where is it now? And like, what trends are you seeing in the styles that people are making, and what's resonating with people?
So I'm really seeing Black people getting into it, which is nice, which is good. Like I said, we only make up 1% of the brewing population in the United States.
Which is insane.
Very insane. But we have 70 breweries in the United States that are Black run. And that's great. The Black people are getting in on this niche too, and saying, I can make a beer. I can do this. I can make something for my community that my community will like. We're seeing a lot of Black influencers doing beer content and stuff like that. People that are doing similar stuff to me, like, just kind of going to breweries and doing collabs. There's a lot of Black women and Black men that are collabing with other people. There's beer podcasts that are happening now that are owned by Black people. So
maybe you should have one.
I know. KJ keeps saying you need to have a podcast.
Seriously,
and I'm like,
I'm here for it. I'll help you get it started. I'm like, that would be amazing.
So, the spaces are starting to open up, and we're starting to push on that glass ceiling. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to push that glass ceiling and maybe crack it just a little bit.
Yes.
Have that shatter eventually. And then, like styles, I think the styles are kind of just all over. Like, lagers are doing really well. I wish I could see more saisons, people doing more saisons, especially for the summer. It's a really good beer for the summer. It's light and refreshing. We're seeing a lot of just our regular styles, like our IPAs and stuff like that. But I think the movement is happening. It's just happening slowly.
Yeah.
But it's happening slowly but faster than what it was before.
Totally.
I think a lot of big beer businesses and big beer reps are starting to offer up scholarships and grants to small business owners that are in the beer industry. There's more programs out there. There's, Garrett Oliver did the Michael Jackson, I think it's Michael Jackson Foundation, where he is giving scholarships away to people that want to get in the brewing and distilling industry. There's grants like the Women's Revolution that is happening. There's a lot of different things. Tito's offering up a grant of $10,000 to small business owners.
Wow.
So there's a lot of different things that are happening out there for the Black community and for people in general, women, color, white, whatever, to get into this brewing industry. And I think we just have to take advantage of that.
And 70 in the United States, that's terrible considering how many breweries, are there in the United States? I have no idea, but way more than 70.
Way more.
It's probably 70 in Colorado alone.
Yeah, probably.
At least.
Yeah.
But no, I think what you're doing is amazing. And I want to know kind of what is the next step for you and where do you want to take the community brew and how do you see it evolving over the next year?
Yeah. So really, I just hope to brew more beers and get with more breweries. We have our next release party July 16th at Two Blokes Brewing from 1 to 4.
Nice.
And it's an all-woman day kind of brew. So Two Blokes is a woman's own brewery now. The owner was passed away. He was a male.
A bloke.
A bloke. Yeah, he was a bloke. And he passed away, so his wife took over. And it's run by 2 women of the brewery.
Cool.
So we're having a woman DJ doing it. We're having great food. We're having cornbread tastings, all those type of things at the brewery because the beer is a cornbread cream ale.
Amazing. Oh my God, that sounds so good.
Yeah, it's really, really good. But really, I just want to keep brewing beers and keep making my initiative out there. I really would love to get this up the East Coast, maybe as a Black is Beautiful type of thing. Maybe come up with a recipe or use the first recipe as a lager and use it as a beer that people brew. The lager was part of the American Home Brewers Association for Big Brew Day, so people all over the world brewed this beer.
That's so cool.
And basically, I've been loving it. We've been getting a lot of replies and feedbacks about it, saying it's so good. It turned out wonderful. You did a great job with the recipe and stuff like that.
Which is hard. I will say, as someone who cooks and writes recipes, I'm you can tell when someone cut corners or didn't actually, when they just wrote down the ingredients and were this is technically the system. It's when a recipe is dialed and anyone can kind of make it and it's perfect. It's a real skill.
Yeah,
writing
definitely.
a recipe is so much more than just putting down the ingredients and being then you do this, 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 and this. It's it's got to work. It's got to have you got to put it in a bunch of different people's hands. And so getting that feedback from people who have brewed it and said it turns out amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah,
it's hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely just trying to get it up and down the East Coast. Definitely try to get it more here in Charleston, doing those things. Just getting it out there and getting people at the release parties. I know it's hard for people to sometimes be well, I'm not really a beer drinker, but it's just just come out and be in the space.
Yeah.
See what it's like to be at a brewery because a brewery is a family environment.
Totally.
You can bring your kids, you can bring your dog. There's spaces for you to be. There's people to talk to. It's like going to Disney World where you're just drinking beer. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You're meeting all these different people. Totally. You're riding all these different rides of the beer. It's great,
I love this analogy.
Yeah, you're just chilling with people and it's amazing. There's food trucks, there's music, there's all these different things. It's just a party that you would go to. It's just at a brewery, and it's just come and just be out there.
I think that's such an excellent point because I'm before I really started spending time in breweries, I didn't really know what to expect. And when you go to one, it's it's kind of just in some cases an indoor outdoor space that's set up for a party all the time. There's just a party happening and you can jump in and get in where you fit in. It's you brought up Munkle and I love their space because I'm the outdoor space is just so it feels like walking into my backyard if my backyard was landscaped. It's just there's a fire pit, there's comfy places to sit. There's always a different food truck. So it's you don't get bored being oh, I've been here and I've had that or whatever.
Right.
Just go and try it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's just such a cool message because that's going to eventually break down the door. Because that guy, going back to the brewer's question, how do I get more Black people in the space? It's well, make it inclusive. Make it a place that everyone can come. And that's easier said than done. People are okay, but how?
Yeah, that's including Black entertainment. It's what the cocktail band said. They were hire within your community or whatever. You're in a predominantly Black neighborhood. So hire a band that's Black to play one night.
Yep.
Play not rock music, play R&B music one day.
Yep.
Once you start doing those things pretty often, have an R&B night, people will start coming to the brewery. I know that you have to look at your brewery and be well, what are people already gravitating towards? But sometimes you have to think outside the box, and you've got to bring those other people in. And if you continue to bring white bluegrass bands in and all this kind of stuff, you're not going to get those people in the space.
Yep.
Have a Latina night. Have, or Latina music, or have a mariachi band or whatever, or have a reggae band or something like that. Music that everybody can listen to.
Yep.
Music brings a lot of people together. And at a brewery, I always base it off of the music. I don't sometimes want to listen to rock when I'm at a brewery.
Yeah.
I would love to listen to some R&B, some old 90s music or whatever.
Oh my God, yes.
Or even hear a reggae band playing. I feel like breweries don't look at their local talent enough, and they go specifically to their white talent, but they don't look at their black talent and change it up. If you brought black talent into your brewery space, you'd have more black people in there.
Exactly. No, that's so well said. And that is going back to it's almost like breweries are almost like an event space. It's like change the scene as much as possible. And like you can open up each night and do something cool and have like things to offer everyone and create that diversity and get more people from all different backgrounds into the space, but not if you're just pushing the same button every single night. It's like we set it up, we turn on this playlist, we serve these beers, we have this food. It's like kind of use what a brewery is to your advantage. Like it's a thing that can be changed and customized, just like the drinking experience. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's so smart. I love what you're doing. And I think that it's kind of an example that a lot of people could look to be like, this is how, like, it's a slow process, but it's also like, you have to just be intentional about what kind of things you're not only putting on the menu, but putting in the space.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you had like just kind of your dream beer, have you ever made it? Like when you're talking about flavor, when you said cornbread cream ale, I'm just like thinking, I'm salivating first of all, because I'm thinking like toasted, like browned butter, nutty corn, like creamy flavors, but also like acid. And so how does one take like, okay, you have this, like you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like blueberry muffins or whatever it is.
Yeah.
How do you take that from that initial thought to where do you start with getting the flavors into the beer?
Yeah, so it's quite difficult. So I am a type of person that I just like come up with these flavors. I'm like, oh, I want this type of beer. Or like, oh, this reminded me, like, this is part of my childhood. So the cornbread was like, I grew up on cornbread and I just love cornbread. And I was with Chef BJ Dennis at an event and he did a Jimmy Red cornbread.
Oh my God.
And it was so savory. And I was like, this needs to be in a beer. And this will go perfect in a cream ale because cream ales are already corny as they are. And they're very, thick mouthfeel. It's kind of like it coats your mouth and kind of stays there for a little bit and lingers. And I was like, a cornbread would be really, really good. It would be just make it more a savory beer, which most people don't think beers can be savory, but have a savory beer.
Yeah.
And when we made it, we homebrewed it. We used 1 pound of Jimmy Red cornmeal from Marsh Hens, and it came out really well. I mean, it came out so good. And that's why I took it to Two Blokes, because they already do a cream ale, then a regular cream ale, and I wanted to expand their cream ale just a little bit more. But basically, it just comes with me thinking about an idea and then me trying to figure out what beer pairing would go well together. And then adding that adjunct.
It's the style. Okay.
It's the style that you have to kind of pair them with.
Genius.
Yeah. So like when we did the Tahitian Treat Soda Sour, we did a Berliner Weiss because we knew that the Berliner Weiss base is very light. It's mostly wheat, so it's not a lot of grain. It doesn't get in the way. It doesn't have all these malty and all these characteristics, and you can use hops that don't really give you any bitterness or anything like that. It gives you a plain palate.
Nice.
And then we use the adjunct of the Tahitian. So we took the flavors of Tahitian Treat Soda and we added that into the beer.
So good.
So it makes it, so you start with you basically think about a style and you figure out what adjuncts you can add into that style to make the final design that you want or the final beer that you want.
Wow. And then you just kind of have to wait. Like, it's like, I guess with anything, like making it, you like have it in your brain, like on paper, how it's going to taste. And then you actually have to go through the tasting process and kind of tweak it and figure out, okay, this didn't come through like I wanted it or.
Yeah. So with like the Tahitian Treat, we went with Frothy Beard and they, one of their, partners is really good at melding flavors together. So we took a little bit of cherry and a little bit of orange and a little bit of pineapple and mixed it in the beer and was like, okay, let's try that. Okay, that's not enough. More cherry, less orange, a little bit of pineapple. Okay, try that. You know, we just kept mixing it up and then we just blended all those flavors together in the beer and then the beer came out and it was perfect.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it sounds so fun. And it's just, you can clearly see like you're such a creative person in the way that you think about it and execute it. And also just, I love your mission and the goal of the initiative in general, I think is so welcome. And
just getting one brew to people at a time.
I love it. So what are some of your favorite breweries in the Southeast even? Because you seem to travel, like you've been to so many. Like what are some standouts to you?
I just went to Atlanta, Tucky, which is in Atlanta, Georgia. It's by the Nappy Roots.
Oh, what?
They made a brewery, and it's so good. They have very good beer. They have like some really good stuff. They have like a peach beer, and they have a lager that's really, really good that they're doing really well on. They're recently just opened within the last year, and they're doing really great. And then I love Munkel. I love Belgian brews. I love saisons. So my thing is like I bleed saison, but I sweat out lagers. If you cut me open, I will bleed a saison because I drink saisons. Like that's the first thing I look for is the saison. But like in the summer months, I love lagers. So Bevy Benny's been like my go-to right now because they're a lager brewery and they're doing really, really wonderful.
God, they're so.
I didn't even realize. I honestly was scared about how a lager-only brewery would do here in Charleston, just because people are such hopheads here.
Yeah.
But they really did it well, and they have a hoppy lager. They have a regular lager. They've got American Pilsner lager, an amber beer, all types of different things. So they're doing really well. Can't go wrong with Holy City.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different variety, a lot of really great food. They've got a great event space. Two Blokes was the first brewery I ever went to in Charleston.
Cool.
And I fell in love with their saison, which I still am in love with it to this day. Rubbermary's got some great beers. They have a great space. I like a lot of breweries, to be honest. I've pretty much been to 35 out of the 37.
Oh my God.
So if I'm usually not working, I'm at a brewery. It's pretty crazy.
That's awesome. I know. There was one day I was driving by and I literally saw KJ crossing the street. I think you guys were going into
Charlestown Fermentary.
Yeah. And he was like, I like yelled at him like a crazy person out of the window, but he was like, oh, I'm going. And then I saw you guys were in there trying beers. So when you walk into a brewery, what are the things like, I feel like you're such an aficionado. Like, what are the things that the categories that you're kind of judging or examining to see if it's like a cool place or like, you know.
So when I go into a brewery, I always look at like the lighting. Believe it or not, breweries are very dark, and I hate that about breweries.
Yeah.
I want light. Like I want to be light. So I usually sit outside because they're too dark inside for me. When I used to work at Two Blokes, I used to turn on all the lights, and my manager would always be like, turn off the lights, April. And I'm like, but I want to see everything.
I don't want to be in a little cave.
I want to see how, like pristine it is in here. So I will usually sit outside. So the outdoor space has to be like a big thing.
Okay.
I definitely look at the beer tenders and what they're doing and how they're pouring beer. Are they immersing my beer into the tap? If they are, I don't want the beer. That's just putting bacteria right back into the tap.
Yep.
Are they friendly? Are they talking to me? Are they asking me questions? Are they asking me what I like? All that kind of stuff. Usually when they ask, I'm like, I drink a lot of beer, but give me your recommendations anyways.
Yeah.
I'm looking at their menu. Is it accessible? Is it easy to read? Like, do they have a chalkboard up? Is it clean? Is the chalkboard clean and you can read it and it's clear? Do you have pictures of your beers? I also look at the seating as well too. Like, how close can I get to the bar? How close can I be to the bartender? How close can I be to the taps? Is your tap room inside your brewery? Can I see your equipment from where I'm sitting?
Cool.
That's a big thing too. I like to be able to see the equipment that I'm drinking out of. So if I have any questions, I can be like, so what do you use that tank for? What do you use this for?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. I want to know. So.
Amazing. And are there any, like you said, you brought up a really good one. Like if they're submerging the tap into the pint, you don't want to drink it. Are there other like no-nos that you're like, oh, this is an absolute deal breaker if you serve me a beer like this?
So if you get a beer and there's like bubbles all on the side of the glass, that means it's dirty. So I won't drink that. Usually that, and if the beer is warm for some reason, I won't drink it.
What about cask ales? Unless it's like
cask ales are warm. So yes, designed to be warm. Yeah, I'll drink them warm.
Okay. But no, otherwise it needs to be the correct temperature. Cause I'm like, that is definitely a thing that I feel like gets missed, especially in the tap situation. And from working in restaurants my whole life, I'm like, lines are nasty.
Oh yeah.
If your lines are nasty, is there a way though? Like I know from looking at them like inside, like, okay, this is gross, but I'm like, when you're drinking a beer, is there a way to tell that the lines are not clean?
If you get like certain off flavors like acetone or like musty, butterscotchy diacetyl, all those will tell me. So like cream corn type of flavor that like the beer shouldn't have corn, like it's a hoppy beer, but it has corn in it. Shouldn't be there.
That's not right.
Yeah, that's not right.
You don't want that.
Yeah.
So cool. I mean, there's just so many things like even when I learned how to properly pour a beer, I was like, there's so much nuance to how you serve it, how you pour it, the glass where you serve it in. Like every single thing plays into how you're experiencing the aromatics of the beer, the flavor of the beer, all of it. So it's really honestly, it's such a cool world to learn about and to get into, because there's just, I don't know. I find that it's a fun hobby. And that's why I think it's really cool that you're trying to encourage more people of color to get into those spaces. Cause I'm like, it's just a good time.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a great time.
You should have a good time.
And I enjoy it. Like if I'm the type of person, like if I'm having a great time or there's a part of my life that is so great, I want to bring people on.
Exactly.
And that's what I do. Like I'm just like, oh, this is so great. You got to come with me. You got to ride this with me.
Yep.
And that's what I did with the first beer. I was like, oh, David, you got to ride with me. This is like such going to be a great experience or whatever. And it was a great experience. We had a really good time doing it. And then, you bring other people onto your team and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. And people believe in you and they believe in your dream. And that's even better, and people are like looking for you. Like I had this guy that wants to invest in me to open up a brewery in North Mount Pleasant. He's like, I've been searching for you for 3 months. And I was like,
damn,
me? Sure. You're talking about me? He was like, yeah. He's like, I heard about you. I read about you in the paper.
Wow.
He's like, I just couldn't figure out how to find you. And then someone posted something and I found you and I was like, okay, got to do this, got to do that, or whatever. Yeah. So having people admire what I'm doing is just so amazing.
And I think your enthusiasm around it and you're just kind of like no fuss, like you're very, very serious about getting it right and being like doing things properly. And you've had so much training and expertise. But you also, it's just about having fun. Like you don't take it too seriously. And that's what, and I like the creative, like kind of flavor profiles and the things that you come up with. I think that in itself is infectious because it's exactly like you said. I remember when I first got into coffee, like there's kind of a similar nuance. Like when you started tasting coffee and like I worked at a Starbucks, but they gave a lot of education about beans and the different, where they come from and how they affect the flavors. And like, obviously Starbucks is the devil, but at that time I got so amped about it that I was taking it home to my holiday parties and being like, hey, do you guys want to do a cupping? And my family was like, what is that? Like, but then it's infectious. They're like, well, this is kind of cool. And then the next time they go to a store and they see a bag of beans, they're like, hey, wait, I know something. I have some point of entry here.
Yeah, exactly.
To like kind of find your own way and your own excitement about it or whatever it is.
That's basically what the community does. So the community is not only a multi-brewer initiative, trying to get people of color into the tap room in the brewing industry, but it's also diversifying the palates of people that don't drink beer.
Yes.
So if you follow me throughout this whole journey, your palate will be diversified. So when you go into a brewery, you don't have to worry about the beer tender giving you the lightest beer. You can be like, no, I don't really like this beer and I don't like this beer, but do you have these three?
Yep.
And like, that is what I really, really want. That's what gets me excited is seeing people go into a brewery and be like, I really like sours, but I don't like them too tart. I like them kind of a little bit on the sweeter side. Or, I really don't like IPAs, but I may be able to do a session IPA. Or, I really like lagers. Can you give me a lager? What's your best lager? And just having that back and forth banter and conversation with the beer tender, because they're already looking at you and thinking that you don't know what beer you want.
Yeah.
So they're already going to give you, oh, he just wants the lightest beer. Oh, I don't want to spend time on them or whatever. So you can have that conversation and be like, yeah, this is what I want. And they'll be like, all right, you know your shit.
Right. Because if like as someone who's waited tables or bartended for a long time, like there's always, when people have the language to articulate what they like, you immediately put them into another category of like, oh, you're in the know.
Yeah.
Like, what you want. And I think it's so great. I think you're so cool. I'm really, really happy to have you on the show. And I want to support you in any way I can. If people are looking for you, like that gentleman trying to invest in you, how can they find you and how can they kind of get involved?
Yeah. So we have the CommUNITY.brew. So THA community.brew. It's on Instagram. We also have me. I'm the Traveling Hoptista, HOPTISTA, on Instagram. We have on our community page, Instagram, we have a link in the bio. It's the link tree, and that's where you can find like articles that I've done before, podcasts that I've done before. You can find our newsletter that we do once a month, which I actually need to start working on now for the new month. And then also our Patreon, which is our donation. So the community is a 501(c) nonprofit. And, nonprofits are based off of donations, and that's how we fund a lot of things. We're trying to eventually become, when I do open up the brewery, a community-based brewery.
Amazing.
So meaning that most of the breweries is made up off of offerings and donations from the community to open up the brewery. So it's never really been done before. I think there's one or two in the United States, but I'd like to be the third one in a black owned one if I can.
Amazing.
So I have people donate. That money goes directly into the brewery, goes into a savings account, and it just kind of builds as we go. We're trying to do scholarships, beer scholarships. So certified beer server exam from Cicerone. We're trying to do beer courses at Seibold Technology School, local colleges around here, BJCP classes. So we're trying to get scholarships for that. We also our release parties cost money, it costs money to have a DJ. It costs money to have these things.
So much. Like people do not realize like events, even down to like renting stuff that you need to like put on the event. Like it's incredibly expensive. Yeah.
So we're looking for donations for that too. All that money helps. And then if you can't really figure out where you want your money to go, or you want to give more, we have a base one at $3, which is just give $3 and it helps go anywhere it goes. Or if you feel like you want to help out everywhere, it's a $25 donation on Patreon, and you can donate $25, but most of them are $5 or $10 that you can donate.
Amazing. I mean, so there's so many different ways at levels to get involved, but I think going to the events is like a huge one, right? You need to have people getting into that space and going to there and trying the beers, because without the people there, it's like, it doesn't work without people there. Your beers, are they on tap anywhere right now?
Yeah. So you can get the community lager. It's still kind of lingering about. We don't have many left. That's at Holy City Brewing on Oregon Avenue in North Charleston.
Nice.
And then we have about a keg left of the Tahitian Treat Sour, and that's at Frothy Beard Brewing in West Ashley, and we have cans to go. And then our beer that recently came out was our Watermelon Wheat for Juneteenth, and that's at Common House. That's on tap in both in Crowlers. And then July 16th from 1 to 4 at Two Looks Brewing in Mount Pleasant off of Long Point Road will be the Cornbread Cream Ale. We'll have a female DJ. We'll have Marcus Middleton from Kiani's Food there. We'll be doing raffles for a lot of different things. Brewery gift certificates, food gift certificates, a cigar lounge gift certificate, hyper wellness gift certificates. So like cryotherapy, red light therapy.
Oh my God.
All those different things. We'll be having a raffle from Motherland Essentials, which is a soap making class. Cool. Local 616 has a gift card. Mellow Mushroom. So we have a lot of different raffles that we're hoping to raffle off and put that money towards our nonprofit. So definitely come out and support.
Yes.
Bring your $5. We'll be doing Cash App and Venmo for those raffles. So that'll be great.
So that's coming up. That's like in
next weekend.
Yeah, literally next weekend. If you haven't been out to Two Blokes, there's lots of parking. It's super family friendly. Like it's easy to get to. It's a really, really cool space.
Yeah. I
will be there. I'm so excited to try the cornbread cream ale.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, already my mouth is like watering. I can't wait to try it.
Yeah.
And join the Patreon, because honestly, as someone, I also have a Patreon, and I'm like, you don't realize how big of a difference it makes. And it's a small amount. Think about the things that you like spend money on mindlessly each month. And it's like, you could be supporting someone who's doing something really, really amazing and would just make the community even better. So definitely get involved. Follow April, Travel Hoptista, and then also the community.
Yep.
On Instagram to kind of stay in the know. And thank you guys so much for listening. April, I'm so happy we finally did it.
I know, we did.
God, I was like, we got to get this done.
Yes.
But I'll see you at Two Blokes.
Yes,
and
definitely.
we'll party. We'll have a pint.
Yeah, we'll have a pint together.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much. Cheers. And you guys know what to do. You can rate the show on iTunes. You can follow it on Spotify. You can do all those things. But definitely check out April and donate to the Patreon. Become a patron. Why not? Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
On irait peut-être au Népal, paraît que les ciels sont plus beaux.